Good morning. My name is Alex Taylor, and I'm the Programs and Digital Experience Manager at NC Tech. NC Tech is the unifying voice and association for the tech sector of North Carolina. If you'd like to learn more about all the things we do, view upcoming events, or if you want to get more involved with NC Tech, please visit nctech.org. Thank you for joining us for this virtual workshop, Profitability Without Price Tags, How an Open Source Company Became a Business Leader. I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this virtual workshop, Umbraco, for making this session possible. I now would like to introduce our presenter, Emma Burstow, Director of Developer Relations at Umbraco, who will be leading this session. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please place them in the Q&A feature down below. And if we have time at the end, we will try to answer these questions for you. A recording of this virtual workshop will be sent to all registrants after the session concludes, so be on the lookout for that. And then without further ado, I will pass it along to Emma. Go ahead and get started.
Hello, hi, and thank you for that lovely welcome, Alex, and thank you for hosting today, and thanks everyone for being here today. It is a pet passion topic of mine, and so having an opportunity to talk a little bit about how open source software is at the core of everything that we do, and to answer the question that I'm often posed, which is, well, how on earth does anyone get paid then? It's always a pleasure. It's always a delight to do it. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about who I am and why it has become a passion project. And I will try not to go on too long for this part because I absolutely can. So I am Emma, the Director of Developer Relations at Umbraco. I'm based in Odense in Denmark, but they don't say it that way. They say Odense, but I don't like to. And you can reach me in a bunch of places. And I love to hear from people, so I love when people do reach out. I am a developer by trade, although I've had many careers. I used to be a high school teacher and a number of other random jobs. But for the last 10 years, I've been in this industry. I've been a nerd my whole life, and I had some incredible thoughts and feelings around open source when I came in to the business. So that for me, it's quite interesting to look back and say, wow, and now it's my job. Now it's my bread and butter. So yeah, you can reach me in any of these places. And I want to give you, before we kick off, a brief history of open source software, which sounds awful because that sounds like it could be quite an endeavor. But the good news is it's going to be in just 100 words or less than 100 words. So the way that I've kind of summed it up is that once upon a time, good story to start with that, there wasn't a lot of code in the world. So it made sense to actually share it in order to innovate. But then one day the industry worked out that you could charge for it, and proprietary software would become the norm. But in that time, open source software hung around and did its thing. And more recently, in the last 5 to 10 years or so, people have realized that this is what we want because open source software actually has more benefits than proprietary software. And those include higher quality of code, which is something that you could not have convinced me of when I first came in. It's more reliable, it's more flexible, it is a lower cost, of course, this much we probably already know, and it puts an end to predatory vendor lock-in. Some of these are a given. So we know that the lower cost, and we know that we escape vendor lock-in when we are using an open source piece of software or working with an open source piece of software or developing one. But how on earth could we also say that the quality and reliability should be higher? And that's something that I just want to talk about for a second, because for me, I had this idea that working with an open source code base or an open source product, it would be like working with Frankenstein's monster. We have trained in-house professionals building a product. Why on earth would you want to open the doors to absolutely anybody who can then build something that also would become a part of that product? It seemed counterintuitive. It seemed self-defeating to me. And it was only when I came to work at an open source company, and before that, actually inside of an open source community, that I realized this isn't the Wild West. When you have an open source product, you are forced just to make your product sustainable or to make any sense or to function and not fail. You have to have these incredibly rigorous sets of processes in order to ensure that the right things are accepted. So if Sally in Raleigh, let's say, decides that she wants to build a module for our CMS for our product, she might have all the best of intentions and she might be a gifted developer, but if she doesn't know how we like our code, if she doesn't know how we what features are on our roadmap, then she doesn't stand a chance of having that code merged. So we've worked incredibly hard to work with Sally and all the other Sallys in the world who want to contribute, not just code, but in any other way, so that we're all speaking the same language, we're all pulling in the same direction, we're all working towards the same goals. And we'll get back to that later because that's quite hard work. So with those processes in place, it is so incredibly satisfying to see what is built in the end, because the processes that work for external contributors are also true for internal contributors. So everybody working on the product is by default moving in the same direction. How did it start? Right. We are not an old company. In tech, there are so few old companies. We're about 15, I think. No, we're 18 years old. I knew this one. We're 18 years old. And we started as two guys, Per Plu and Niels Hartvig. They had a passion project. They wanted to create a content management system that was open source, flexible, and really, really lightweight. They named it after the Danish word for the Allen key, which is like that wrench that you get in IKEA that fits many, many things, because they wanted it to be that light and flexible. But they still had to keep the lights on. They still had to grow to be 8 developers after a while. And so they did that through support plans, partnerships, and training. Now, the support plans, self-explanatory, people would pay so that because we build Umbraco as a developer tool, there are an awful lot of ways that it can be used, misused, used creatively. Support is key in keeping people working in ways that supports their businesses too. So we're able to offer that support and people would pay us for that support at one point. We also, in the same vein, offered training, because training people how to work with the product was really, really fruitful. And we had partnerships. And I like mentioning the partnerships. These are 3 things that I'm not really going to go into detail around today, because as an open source business, there are many, many things that you can charge people for, and they will pay the money. And then you can still say, hey, we're free. But, really, there are people keeping the lights on in all these other ways. And that's great, that's fine, but I don't think we're doing anything innovative with those 3 things. And so the things that I'm going to move on to talk about are things that are really what gets us excited at Umbraco and how we see our business growing. But partnerships back in those days used to be very much funded or kind of sold through goodwill. Did you like us? Did you want to spend a bit of money keeping us going? That's how, and I was speaking to some long-term partners now who've been partners for more than 10 years. And they're like, oh, it's amazing. With the partnership model now, we get things. There are benefits. But back then, it was like, yes, of course, we will support your business. We use your tool. So we love communities. And communities are huge, not just in the open source world. They are huge in business today. I am biased. I am a community manager. It's one of the massive parts of my job, but I'm also someone who was raised in a tech community. My whole education is in the arts, and I got my education through becoming a part of the Umbraco community, working with mentors, working with other people, contributing to open source, and learning that way, very much on the job and outside of the job in my evening hours. And so it was really important to me when I put together this talk that I didn't just go on my own gut and my own kind of biases. And it's great because it turns out that the grown-ups are talking about communities too. So I looked at some of the less kind of techie nerd spaces that I inhabit to see what people were talking about when they talked about community, and our experiences were very aligned. It's so there's such a value in building a tech community or a community around your product, that venture capitalists are now seeking out companies that have great communities and saying, yeah, we can see a future for them. And partly the reason that we love communities and that they agreed, and this is what they agreed on, was that they're critical to branding and marketing and product adoption. In a landscape like the one that we currently inhabit, where people communicate to each other globally, instantly, and in groups across, I mean, even one, there was a point just a few years ago when there were just a few social media platforms that people needed to worry about. Now there's a sprawl. So customers will talk freely. It's not that they will meet over a coffee or at a local networking event, which still happens. They will also be meeting in other spaces. So a community is critical because people will talk about your product and they will talk about how much they love it, what their pain points are. And if you can be a part of that conversation, and if you can create space for that conversation to happen, it's going to go a lot better than if you just separate yourself from it. So we think that one of our three main pillars is building brand equity through a passionate community. Why? Why do we do that? We don't do it because it's more fun, although it is, and we don't do it because I like it and I'm in charge, although I do and I am. We do it because we know that our community will amplify our brand beyond anything that our campaigns could, and we're not alone in this. So if we look at Microsoft, the biggest open source organization in the world right now, this is their dev community. It's not their entire community. This is the .NET developer community. And when you look at those numbers, you can see the possibilities. This many people follow them on Twitter. How many people are tweeting about them? How many people are talking about them? The Microsoft have resources like we could only dream of right now, but they could spend those promoting themselves in sponsored ads or ad campaigns, and they do that. But these numbers have far more reach than anything that they could consciously do without leveraging that community. So how do you make your customer relationship go from price to priceless? You build a community. Sounds simple. Right? It's easy peasy, except it's not. There's a catch. I was a friend of mine, one of the founders of the company, who it has since moved on many years ago, gave an incredible talk at an event 2 years ago, Code Garden, called Open Source Work is Work. And in it, he said, there's a well-known saying, I didn't know it, so it can't be that well-known, that open source is free like a puppy. You sure have the puppy, but that puppy is going to cost you money over the years. there's no such thing as a free puppy. And so when Per and Niels decided that this project would be open source, they did it as a passion project. That's what they wanted, it's what they needed. And it worked for them because they were really willing to work with the people that would be contributing to their product. Hasn't always been smooth. My goodness, it's been the growing pains that I've witnessed, and I've only been around for 8 years, are astonishing, because there are people in the community who are not paid by us, so we can't actually tell them what to do, who built huge sections of the product that we use day to day and that we maintain. If you can't keep those people on side, fortunately for us, we have, you could be in trouble. So maintaining a community like this, it has to make business sense. If you can't assign it value, don't do it. Here are some of the things that we do in order to keep our community an environment that people want to be in, because ultimately what we need is an environment where everybody contributing will willingly update and maintain their projects. We are dependent on their projects. They're not just a part of our ecosystem. It's not been detached. We have dependencies that are external to us, as does everyone. I mean, in this landscape, you can't escape open source dependencies. But some of our projects that we depend upon are one-person workshops, and they're not paid by us. So creating that environment is key. If you can't foster that environment, then you could have some problems. And key for us in doing that is really making sure that one of our core values is openness. And when we say openness is a core value, it's not lip service, and it can't be. We need people to trust us, and to do that we have to be completely honest, and we have to be mostly open. And I say mostly, not completely, because of course there are security things that we have to take into account. And it's not just security. There are some features that people get incredibly excited about, and they've laid some of the groundwork for. Even when we're planning a roadmap, you don't want to release it until you've spoken to this person, or you might need to know that this feature is not coming tomorrow, and so on. There's an awful lot of listening and talking and sharing, collaborating that goes on. And there are processes behind this. It's not a kind of, listen people, the door's open, pop in anytime you like. People can still feel ignored when you tell them you're free anytime to talk, and then they don't get in touch. So we do a number of different things around that. We have office hours, we send out updates, we run events, we run huge events, and then we sponsor other events, and then we facilitate events where people will get together, like meetups. And we also have a really egalitarian approach to our marketplace, which we'll look at later, so that if somebody over in the UK is building a project that relies on Umbraco and improves our product and is charging for it, and we have a competing product, we really try to approach that sensitively as well, and not say, look at ours, we need you to buy ours. It's just not at all how we roll. So we believe that having that openness makes all of our products better, because we're 130 people in our company, but these numbers represent our contributors, our visitors, and our friends. The amplification factor is absolutely huge. We are small, but we're much bigger than we could be if we can keep people happy on side and feeling safe enough to collaborate and contribute. So how does it benefit our business? I say that it benefits our product, but there's so many ways. But these ways are the ways that make business sense. You're never working in a vacuum. You've got the common goals, you work together. We've got the benefit of creating solutions in collaboration with our user base. The people that are going to use the product have contributed to the product. It's not a trick or a trap, but you can see how it keeps people around. And we continue to innovate. Our horizons are super broad because they're not limited to the people in this room. I'm standing right now in the CMS room. So I'm in the heart of the open source development world right now. And it's just me, because in Denmark, people really go on vacation in the summer. And there are when people are here, there are some brilliant people in this room, but we are limited. Of course, we're limited. There's just us. There's 14 of us here, other developers in other parts of the business, but we are hundreds or thousands instead of the 14 people here. That's how broad our horizons are. And then another really good businessy thing is that we don't need to sell to people. People have bought in. They've bought in because they have contributed. So there's an awful lot of people we don't need to sell to. There are people who would rather work with Umbraco. It doesn't always mean they do, but they'd rather work with Umbraco than another CMS, because they know that if something's not working the way they want it to, they can use an hour of their time, change it, submit a pull request, it will get merged. It works the way they want it to. Not every project can say that. And so there's lots of good reasons. So yes, we don't need to sell to some people. We love that. I'm going to rush you through this part because I want to move you to the next part, which is that one of the things that's been key to this, and this is something that my CEO likes to talk about, is that there's a secret to building a symbiotic relationship between the open source side of the business and the commercial products or projects. So we are a CMS that you can install for free, you can run for free, and many people do. And then we have a cloud offering, which is the same software, the same CMS, but with vast improvements around how easy it is to deploy sites, to work with them, et cetera, collaboration. But of course, our cloud product was only developed in 2000, I think it was released in 2015. So up till that point, we had tens of thousands of people working, I think hundreds of thousands of people working with the on-premise product who still do. They deploy that into the cloud. And that's not our only commercial product that's relatively new. And one of the things that we've taken on board is that, if we're going to ask, we need to really have some benefits if we're going to charge people to use something they can get for free. But actually, it's not been as taxing as we might have thought. So how can that relationship even work is the question. So many paid products have got open source sides, and this is Spotify. The speaker that I mentioned earlier, actually, he was working for Spotify at the time, but he'd also been at Zalando. He's moved on to Docker now. And there are so many companies that spend time thinking, should I go open source? Should I not? We never had that luxury. We were open source from the beginning, and it made sense for the way that our business worked then. And our business has changed dramatically, but it still makes sense now. How does it make sense? Or we have an ecosystem built by other people that we sit amongst. So you've probably heard the words composable, DXP, developer experience platform. We have our approach to that has been that Umbraco sits at the center of an ecosystem where other products integrate easily into it. Years ago, I read a book, Rework, by everyone calls him DHH. I'm not a fan of the man, to be fair, but I'm a big fan of the book. And he really drove it home in that book, that the best thing you can do is build a tool that's good at what it does and doesn't have to do a bunch of other things. I'll come back to that in a moment. And so when they built Umbraco, on every business decision that we make about how we're going to grow it, we have to really ask ourselves, are we the best people to be building that? In the package ecosystem, we watch developers who have worked with Umbraco for years at the client end build things that improve their experience. Could we do it? Yeah, sure. We've got the technical ability, but would we even see the need? I don't know. We categorize things in such a way that when something new becomes available, we create a new category. We will have different tools for editors, different tools around search, different other things that we can integrate too. But the really important thing that we have here is, if you look at this slide, we've got USync on the left, which is a paid external product. That's not us. And then we've got Umbraco Forms next to it, and that is us. People pay us for that. And there's nothing there that's going to differentiate it except for that tiny little Umbraco logo. And funnily enough, we actually have a product that competes with USync, has a similar use case to USync. But we believe by feeding this ecosystem, giving it room to breathe and giving it an opportunity to showcase itself, developers are going to love our product. It's not about what we get paid for or what we own. We think that creating this really buzzing, thriving ecosystem is exactly what makes people want to work with us. And actually, if they work with us, they end up investing in one of our brilliant paid tools because they want to, not because we've showed them it's the only one that's available, right? So we sort by popularity. The brilliant thing about that is that we get the data. So we know what people want. So if tomorrow somebody starts or somebody creates a package that's downloaded by 10,000 people within 2 weeks, that can influence our roadmap. So opening it up like this just feels like it makes sense. We have access to data that we wouldn't even have because people are working together and they're creating something for us that improves our product. I love how much collaboration actually happens in a good tech community. This isn't just ours. I'm really I'm acutely aware of that. I found myself in a very engaged community, and I'm very grateful of that. But when I was writing the talk, I looked online and I was like, oh, let's find some examples of people working together. And I think that this sums up nicely the kind of environment that we have needed to create, we continue to support. These people on this slide do not work together. They actually work for competitors. So both Paul and Joe and Purnima and Carl are all in the same market, all working for different people, and they all collaborate. They all give each other props because inside of the Umbraco community, there's this willingness to believe that the goodwill will be paid back. And it's not hippie stuff. It's actually logic. If you leave a good impression, if you show, Joe gets a chance to show Paul what he can do. If something comes up that Joe needs to pay Paul for, or Paul needs to pay Joe for, they're going to choose that person. This is the kind of logic that often, people can say, we've been called the hippie department more than once, but it's a priceless form of collaboration. And as a result, that approach to making sure that our paid products never overshadow the important, we never spend time developing a paid product that does not benefit the on-premise product or vice versa. And that means that we add fuel to the fire. And I've included this picture because a PR lady got in touch and she was writing something about us and she wanted to see the slides to this talk or the original iteration. And she said, Emma, your talk, it reminds me of when there's a campfire and everybody is sitting around the same campfire, adding logs, and you provide the space. And if people want to pay more for marshmallows, they'll pay for the marshmallows, but everyone enjoys the same fire. And I liked that because I am a hippie. So their contributions make the product better. And that means that we don't have to charge for every little thing. We've never had to shark in the industry. And we don't think that a good open source business can thrive that way. It's not so much goodwill, it's an economy of helping. It is total logic. And that is the way that the paid products and the free products have worked together. The future for those things is it's so broad. The roadmap coming up is fixed, but within that there's so much scope, and we are constantly learning from the community who spend more time working with our product as a user and a developer with the product than we ever could. When they tell us what they want next or what they're doing with it, it's just mind-blowing. So we also, I mentioned CDXP, and the composable architecture has been central to our business model as well, because, well, here you go. I'm going to give you a brief history again in less than 10 words this time. But I have to go back a slide to see what those 10 words. No, I don't. I've got it here. In less than 10 words, the composable architecture is a way of saying we can't do that. And it almost sounds self-defeating again. Like, here we are, we're a CMS, and somebody comes to us and they say, what we'd really like is a PIM, and we'd love to pay you because we like Umbraco. We want Umbraco to do it, and we don't want to go to any external vendor. And we have to look around and say, we're not the best people to do it. We're not going to do it. We could invest and we could grow and we could build on. But this is where so many products can become that Frankenstein. And so we've always made the decision to stay small and focused, not small in stature, but in our focus. It's tight what we do. We're a brilliant CMS, and we've worked hard to make sure that we're better at integrating. That has been our aim. So this third thing, being a part of a composable architecture, allows any company to be bigger than it could be, bigger than it should be. And when I was writing this, I looked up, what's the best way, like what are the benefits of composable architecture? And it's the obvious things and the less obvious things. I liked the free to keep innovating point, because if I'm a content management system, a CMS, and I do not want to be a data lake, and I do not want to be a customer relationship manager, a CRM, I'm pretty sure that's what it stands for, then the thing that I'm building is going to progress so much faster and with so much less effort than if I spent my time trying to work out how to do the other thing. And I talked before about the Umbraco tool and this simplicity. By no means what we build or do is simple, and I don't think that's true for any tech company. But we stick to improving what we know. We don't stick to what we know, we stick to improving what we know. And I think it's a fantastic approach for us. So the best way that we can innovate in terms of the changing landscape in tech is to make ourselves really easy to work with, to play nice with others, and just to say, can't do that. So I found this quote from Satya Nadella, Mr. Microsoft. He said that every company is a software company, and you have to start thinking and operating like a digital company, because essentially we are a part of a bigger landscape. And if we want to be ready for the future, if we want to be ready for the next thing, then trying to work out how we can be a part of that wider network of products is key to sustaining our own future. And I love the thing about composable. It's a marriage made in heaven, I like to say, because it is sustainable, scalable, and flexible. And these are the things that are said of open source. When I want to build something quickly and I'm a one-person team, I will look at what is simplest to get started, and I will have my use case and I'll build the thing. And then that changes. If I'm a part of a composable architecture and I'm working with Umbraco, I can look at all these different products that suit me as this one person team. But if I'm I'm in a team of 50, I can do the same. I can choose the bigger, more enterprise product. It just makes sense. It means that Umbraco can be a fit for all kinds of clients. So the three things that have made our business grow in recent years, and what continues to make us grow, what's taken us from 2 people to 130 to who knows how many, and a bright, bright future, have been those 3 exciting, interesting things, and many others, but the keys have been the passionate community, the composable architecture, and the knowing that we're a part of a wider ecosystem, really treasuring what the community build and not putting our paid products at the forefront, not stopping people from innovating by putting everything behind a paywall. So to sum up, I just want to say, at what point did I become an authority on this? At what point did we become an authority on this? I'm not sure we are authorities on this. I love the opportunity to share my experience and our learnings, but we've still got so much to learn. And we have a ton of wonderful stories to tell as well. This workshop could be a book, but you might not buy it and you might not read it all. We have had to be really nimble, because everybody in this industry has to be. We have to work to stay relevant. And what you do when you're teeny tiny doesn't always work when you're larger. but we try. And thus far, we've succeeded in keeping friendliness at our core, being open, listening, learning, and that friendliness has scaled really well. And I just want to end on one thing, because I was having lunch with a colleague today and I told him what I was doing. He's been around way longer than me, and he told me it would be remiss of me not to share this story with you. While I was away, there was a severe security incident, which isn't usually the best bit of gossip. And it reached me when I got back to my desk. I asked him what had happened, and he said, "Oh, it's a great story." I was like, "Oh, how's that?" And he said that somebody in the Ukraine which was Bogdan, had identified a security vulnerability. He'd gone away and he had investigated and really made sure that this was something that we should worry about. In order then to confirm, he went to developers. He wasn't a developer, Andre and Dimitro, and went to them, and they confirmed, and they followed our guidelines about disclosure, and we worked together and we fixed it with them. And Runa, my colleague, was saying to me, "Do you know what, Emma? Like, I know it's a pain. We've got to write to people, we've got to send a patch out, but it's so good that this came to us this way. Like, that this is the way we get to tell the story, that people gave up their time to improve our products yet again." And so when we wrote to people explaining what to do in the patch information, of course, we credited the people that had highlighted it. And I think this goes a long way to maintaining that open environment. We do a lot of talking and listening, sharing. We also apologize, and we give credit where credit's due. And not all of that is fun and glamorous, but it is key to building that trust. Right. Thank you very much. If you want to find out anything else, please do so at umbraco.com. These are the ways that you can reach me. LinkedIn is definitely the best way, and I'm yet to find a very quick and easy way of sharing my LinkedIn info with people. So that's my name, and you can search it if you want to. And if there are any questions, I would be more than happy to take them.
All right. Doesn't sound like anyone has any questions. Again, thank you so much, Emma. You did awesome.
Okay.
And thank you again to Umbraco for sponsoring the session. Like I said before, we'll send a recording out to all registrants from this session, as well as the slides. And then please check out nctech.org for any future events. Umbraco is also sponsoring a workshop in the fall on October 4th. So check that out. That topic is sustainability. So check that out, and thank you all for joining.